Welcome along to Season 3 of Into the Sky, where we soar through the captivating story of the iconic Avro Vulcan XH558. I'm your host, Martin Price, and this season we're bringing you an all-star lineup of guests, a pilot who commanded this magnificent aircraft, the dedicated volunteers preserving her legacy, and the education partners inspiring South Yorkshire's youth and the team shaping XH558's future. Join us as we unravel the rich history of this Cold War titan, discover how she's fueling STEM education, explore how lessons from the past are engineering tomorrow's innovations. From the cockpit to the classroom, Into the Sky bridges generations, proving that XH558's influences reach far beyond the runway. Buckle up for a journey that'll span decades and touch the lives of many. This is more than a podcast, it's a flight through history, innovation and inspiration. Welcome along to another great episode of Vulcan to the Sky. I've got two people with us today who are very important to the Trust. We've got our big boss himself back behind the microphone. We've got Marc Walters, and we've also welcoming in Christian Foster, Programme Director for the South Yorkshire Airport Corporate Resources. Welcome along, gents. Thanks very much for taking up your time to talk to us today. Are you both okay?
Yeah, good. Thank you, Martin.
Yeah, very well.
So first and foremost, I'm going to fire a question out to you, Marc, okay?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because there's been some great news coming out in the news just recently, hasn't there?
Yes, absolutely.
So it must be an incredibly exciting time at the Trust. Do you think you can share what it means to finally have confirmation that 558 will remain at a spiritual home in Doncaster?
Well, as you know, Martin, back in 2022, when we were told that 558 would need to leave site at the end of our lease in June 23, it wasn't something anyone at the Trust wanted. We would have had to dismantle her, move her by road and rebuild 558 with as much functionality as possible. She wouldn't have been quite the same, and we all know that, and her supporters definitely didn't want that either. So to get to this stage and be able to have the certainty that XH558 will remain intact and we can move forward with plans for the future is as huge a relief as it is exciting. And as you said, she has history on the airfield at former RAF Finningley, being based there between 1961 and 68. So this feels really good.
Excellent. I know we've all got smiles as we walk around Delta Court, and I'm sure there's more great news to come, which I'm looking forward to. Christian, so before we actually dive into the specifics about the Vulcan, do you think you could give our listeners an overview of where things stand with the airport reopening and plans under the South Yorkshire Airport City Programme?
Yeah, of course, Martin. Firstly, thank you for the opportunity to meet your listeners as well. Like I say, is the Vulcan resonates with me personally because obviously I grew up and was born almost kind of like 500 yards away from the runway. So, in regards to something that's born in your blood, the Vulcan is extremely important for myself, as well as, the Mayor of Doncaster. I think for me, we've said very publicly around our detailed programme plan, the commercial operations returning back in spring 2026. We've clearly, in terms of the Mayor, made in a now public announcement just before Christmas that in beginning of this year, we'll be making a public announcement about, the whom in regards to the operator, but also in regards to some of those key decisions. At the moment, we're clearly out at the moment on the public subsidy, and we anticipate a response back by the 22nd of January. And we're also going to South Yorkshire Mail Combined Authority in February, on the 11th of February, around the access to the gain share resources. So two big significant milestones, and there's a lot of hard work that's gone in by, in terms of ourselves and colleagues and of, public sector as well as the private sector supporting us. So, 2025 hopefully will be a really buzz year for all of, in terms of Doncaster businesses and residents. So I'm really looking forward to both, the challenge, but also the opportunities.
It sounds like it's going to be an exciting year. And of course, the burning question that's going around at the moment is when will a new operator be announced? So we'll keep his fingers crossed that that's not going to be too far away then.
Yeah, and we've been very clear about the quality of and the international expertise of that, from an operator point of view, Martin. So I know, both, in terms of locally, regionally and nationally, as well as internationally. Once, in terms of names have been released into the public domain, everyone will get behind that. And it's an exciting opportunity really for, in terms of a significant amount of investment being attracted into the place, which, as a Doncaster, logistically we're the heart of the country, and an opportunity to be able to provide, significant employment opportunities, but also trading opportunities for, in terms of what a lot of residents is, it resonates specifically with myself and also, in terms of our political leaders here in Doncaster.
Yep. And Marc, you mentioned earlier on, of course, about when the lease was due to expire 2023 with Peel. One of the challenges that we had to face was moving of the aircrafts. But looking back to 2022, when the airport actually closed, what other challenges did the Trust have to face?
Well, where to start? 2022 and 2023 were very long years. So in 2022, as soon as we've been told we needed to leave, we started looking at the options. And then subsequently, the airport announced it was closing and ceased operations in November 22. Our challenges were A, where to go, B, how to move such a large aircraft, and C, the cost. Thankfully, we had two very accommodating and welcoming potential landlords that we're in discussions with. And we remained in contact with them right up until the end of last year when the announcement came that we could stay. So we had good relationships with them and very good options of where to go. Clearly, an aircraft with a 111-foot wingspan couldn't simply be loaded on the back of a truck and driven to a new location. I'm told a single lane on a UK motorway is usually about 12 foot wide, so we would have needed a 10-lane motorway that ran for the entire length of the journey to avoid dismantling the jet. But we'd engaged with an aeroplane engineering company that was experienced in aircraft disassembly, and they provided a plan of how they would disassemble the jet, all the major assembly production joints and disconnect systems so she could be moved by road and reassembled at the new location. So that was 2 boxes ticked. We had somewhere to go and a plan to move the aircraft. The next challenge that we would have to raise £750,000 to carry out that task. Thankfully, we didn't get to the stage where we needed to launch that fundraising campaign. So Peel Land and Property had taken over the running of the site from Peel Airports, and they became our new landlord. And in early March 23, we had conversations on the possibility of remaining, which obviously we welcomed that with open arms. At that stage, we agreed that our parking lease could be extended to the end of 2023 while the discussions continued. So alongside that, City of Doncaster Council were negotiating with Peel for a lease on the land, with the council planning to reopen the airport. Slowly, our conversations with our landlord come to a halt. And our feeling at the time was that the lease discussions must be so well advanced with the council that they were just preparing to hand us and the land over to the council. In July, this was a pivotal point for us. The Mayor of Doncaster, Ros Jones, she posted on Facebook that if they were successful on a lease for the land, she hoped to see XH558 remain in Doncaster for years to come. And that was a great sign for us. So we diverted our attention, and in August 23, we were able to have conversations with Christian and the team working on the program to reopen the airport. For a while, there've always been positive conversations, but for a while, there wasn't much that Christian could authorise or sign off because it wasn't the council's land to manage. Our landlord wasn't really engaging with us because they would soon be handed over to the council. So we had to sit tight. We were in limbo for a while, but with the positivity that we weren't dismantling the aircraft. So I would say, Christian, our conversations have been very good all through that. And after the great news that the 125-year lease on the land was agreed, I think they've increased in positivity. Not to put you on the spot.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it's been a real pleasure to work with you, to be honest, Marc. And I think we've said before, there were 136 of these aircraft, in terms of the Vulcan built in the UK. It's such an iconic, in terms of brand in our history. This was leading edge, and as a place, Doncaster being leading edge for, a number of transport propositions. If you think about the Flying Scotsman to the Mallard, never mind, in terms of the Vulcan and its presence within Doncaster. So we're very keen to make sure that, in terms of we get a permanent situ of, the Vulcan on site. And it's not just, in terms of left on the tarmac. I think it'd be criminal if it was just remaining on the tarmac. I think there's a real opportunity going forward.
So, Christian, you're talking there about an iconic aircraft, and obviously about, it being, it'd be a shame just to have it stood on the tarmac.
Yeah.
How do you think having an iconic aircraft like Vulcan 558 is going to fit into the broader vision for the reopened airport? What role do you see it playing in attracting visitors and aviation enthusiasts?
So, yeah, it's a really good question, Martin. We've talked about the South Yorkshire Airport City brand, and that has so many different levels. I think there's a piece around how do we get, in terms of green tech aviation, located on site. But then there's also a piece around engineering and education, and how do you stimulate and provide, an education facility potentially on site, which supports a number of industries. And some of those is, in terms of some of the iconic, developments of the Vulcan, and how do you passport, in terms of that learning into an educational point of view. So I think on many fronts, as a visitor attraction, you can see, the sheer numbers that have been presenting themselves to the airport, over the last, 12 months while it's been in our tenure. We're very keen to see and experience what a Vulcan is. And I think it's great to see that it's not just, traditionally, like me and Marc are both bald-headed, middle-aged men. And it's great to see, actually, there are, real generations of, grandparents, parents, as well as young kids wanting to be energised by actually seeing, in terms of a Vulcan at first hand and having the opportunity to physically get into it. I think, in terms of that, you can see that passion, and why wouldn't you want to kind of, continue that real connectivity to, the residents of the region.
Yeah, you're right. There is the enthusiasm there across all age groups, and we see that on a regular basis when people come and visit 558. So, and Marc, in the past, there's been talk of plans for the Vulcan experience. So can you share your vision for this project, how it might evolve? And now that you've had confirmation of long-term security on the site, how do you see it evolving?
Well, yes, the Vulcan experience was actually what we offered in Hangar 3 when we were there back in the day, before we moved out in January 2017. And basically our business model was effectively destroyed at that point. So we tried to raise the funds to build a new Vulcan experience building back in 2020, as you know. But fundraising for such a big sum during the COVID years proved a step too far. And then we're asked to leave Doncaster. So now, after a roller coaster of a journey, we're in the positive state that we can revisit the plan to build the Vulcan experience, which will be not only a roof over the head of 558, but it'll be an environment where we can tell the story of the RAF, its people in the Cold War based around the V-Force, and we can tell the story about the Vulcan, and especially the story of Avro Vulcan XH558. And we'll also offer education experiences in there. So the plan is to agree a lease for a plot of land on site. And the hope and expectation is that the lease is an investable proposition. We were negotiating a lease in 2019, 2020 to be able to build the Vulcan experience. Disappointingly, that lease wasn't something that the investor we were talking to felt they could support us on. They liked the project, liked our fully scoped out business plan and all the proposals for the build, but the lease was uninvestable. So we had to launch the fundraising campaign, which, as you know, failed. With an investable lease, and already having received positivity for all the other aspects of our plans before, we believe we can get an investment for the build project. And in fact, Christian's team and our team were actually meeting on a proposed plot next week to begin those future planning. So watch this space.
Yeah, I look forward to that one, mate. Look forward to that. So, Christian, how do you think that the Vulcan experience may complement other developments planned for the airport site? Are there going to be any opportunities for synergy between aviation heritage and future operations, do you think?
100%, Martin, I think. So I think there's a few things really to say. I think if you think about the original situ of the location of the site, it was next to a wastewater treatment site. And now Marc don't mind me saying this, but actually it was in the wrong location. If anyone's stood next to a wastewater treatment site in the summer, they're not the greatest, in terms of attractors. And actually, how can we look at providing, in terms of the availability of land to support, a purpose-built building, but which is in the right location, which is easily accessible. Because as you'd imagine, accessing an airport, with certain, strict controls that we have in place becomes extremely difficult. So how can we, within the tenure of our, boundary of the airport, provide something which gives the opportunity for visitors to visit, in terms of, so the facility is basically landside, and that presents greater opportunities, for Marc and the team. I think the other bit is, if you think about the situ of the potential site, it's directly opposite a new 5-star hotel being built. Now, if you think about South Yorkshire, I don't believe there are any 5-star hotels within South Yorkshire. And I think the quality of that hotel, it looks like something that you'd be built in Dubai. So actually, I think, in terms they'll be attracting some key clients, into that airport. So I think there's an ability to be able to, synergy in regards to high-end clients who are accessing a hotel directly opposite a fantastic, potentially purpose-built facility for the Vulcan. I think the other part, we'd obviously talked about, the educational links, and also as part of the airport boundary, we've also acquired some additional land, about 120 acres, which we're keen to build the South Yorkshire Airport City proposition. In terms of the industry is ripe for a revolution in regards to green aviation, and, having, the Vulcan as part of that story around, this is, something that was built in the 40s and 50s, which was revolutionary, to obviously some of the potential opportunities on site around presence of different industries. I think, there's a really strong narrative here, specifically for Doncaster. So, yeah.
Wow. Blimey, there's a lot there going on, isn't there?
Yeah, and you've also got to think about, we're at the heart of the country. We've got some fantastic transport links, not only from road, but also from rail. And if you think, the likes of, the East Coast Main Line runs through the heartland of Doncaster, and you can see, neighbouring propositions like the Yorkshire Wildlife Park, which actually, if you talked, 30 years about, a zoo being viable in terms of Doncaster, you'd probably actually just gone, no way, it's not going to happen. And look at how, in terms of thriving, the Yorkshire Wildlife Park is today, and it's great to see. And, why can't that be for other propositions such as the Vulcan?
Yeah, absolutely. I suppose that's a great model to work from, really, isn't it? So, Marc, in previous episodes, we've talked about the Trust Education Programme. So could you elaborate on how securing this long-term home is going to help expand these initiatives?
Yeah, I mentioned earlier as well that we'll offer education experiences within the Vulcan Experience building. And the building means we can continue to develop our education program and keep inspiring the future generations with the sight of a Vulcan and detail of the innovative technology that went into building the aircraft. And as with tours, being undercover gives us more opportunities to provide these types of visits for schools, colleges, and universities. So the building's going to be a massive help to expand our education program even further than we amazingly have while the aircraft's outside.
Yeah, I suppose being undercover, like now with weather as it is, we can't really take people out to look at the aircraft and do the things that we do normally, can we?
No, our volunteers, as you know only too well, Martin, can be outside giving tours in some rubbish British weather. But even on those days, supporters go away well looked after with a smile on their faces because they've spent some time with their Delta lady. And you see that when children see the aircraft as well, their eyes light up seeing this massive aircraft. So, yeah, being undercover is just going to be able to provide much more opportunities like that.
Yeah, fantastic stuff. And Christian, from the council's perspective, what potential do you see for combining the airport's reopening and the Vulcan's present to be able to create educational and employment opportunities for young people in Doncaster?
Yeah, it's huge. I think if you just, listened obviously to what Marc's just said, I think, obviously I'm based on site at the airport, and rightly, as you see young adults, both male and female, whenever they want to visit the airport, they want to get close and personal next to the Vulcan and an opportunity to get in there. I think, how great it is that actually this acts as an inspiration for young adults to get into, aviation or into engineering or into other aviation supported industries. So I think there's this fantastic alignment between what we're trying to achieve at the airport. Clearly, we've got, ambitious plans around, the growth of the airport and all the supporting industries, and, having hotels in the locality filled, with individuals who are visiting the airport, but also visiting, in terms of the Vulcan experiences. This is what we're all about, and stimulating the economy, both locally and regionally. The likes of, the National Rail College, as well as, in terms of the National Racing College, as well as, the race course. We've got some fantastic assets in Doncaster, and Vulcan is part of that.
Yeah. Marc, for many years, supporters who have followed 558's journey since her flying days, but what can they look forward to in terms of access and events now that her future is secured?
So we're just finalising the promotion of our tour dates for the year ahead, and we'll be sharing them soon with supporters that are signed up to our free regular emails. And if you're listening and you're not signed up, visit vulcantothesky.org, scroll to the bottom of the page, and you can enter your email and subscribe. Looking further forward, when we get a building, we'll go back to the access we were able to provide when we were in Hangar 3, which was being open 5-6 days a week with evening events through the year. We haven't had a wedding under the jet while we're in Hangar 3. So obviously access is easier to provide when we're under roof, and we can just have many, many, many more people come to see her.
Yeah, absolutely. Those were the good days. People coming around, yeah, they were the good days, yeah. Held some great events, didn't we, really, when we were in Hangar 3, when we had the Vulcan Ball. Do you remember that? Wow.
Yeah. And they're very unique events to sit there, have a full meal underneath the wings of this massive aircraft is something special.
Yeah, it was an absolutely amazing night. So, something like that would be great to look forward to again, yeah. Christian, as we look ahead to the airport's reopening, what timeline can you share with our listeners, and how do you think the Vulcan to the Sky Trust will be involved in these developments?
Yeah, it's a really good question, Mark. We alluded to, obviously, the public announcement the Mayor made before Christmas about spring 2026 for commercial operations. We've already got on site, 2XL as tenants, and their aircraft returned on the 6th of December, and we've seen both their flights, in terms of leaving the airport as well as returning, and that will continue throughout 2025. I think, there's a financial ask to be able to build a purpose-built facility, and, supporting Marc around external grant finance searches is key. It's going to be, a significant ask, and helping to, support Marc around accessing that, external private finances is obviously going to be key. We're keen to support Marc on that. And clearly, this is from a build point of view. There are going to be a number of developments, capital developments on the site, which, you'll see around, from an airport point of view, but also stimulating this potentially on the corner of DSA. So I think from a timeline point of view, certainly, I don't know about you, Marc, but obviously getting that first site visit in this week, and then as we build forward around those architectural plans, and, from a planning permission point of view, there's certain kind of stage gates we just need to go through, as well as, in terms of accessing that external finance. But I think there's a clear commitment from yourself and us to work at pace to obviously get, something which will be really exciting for Doncaster.
Yeah, absolutely.
So are we looking at something like a 5-year project here on everything that you've said?
If we talk about, usually funding windows for external finance, they tend to be kind of between that 3 to 5 year envelope. So certainly, supporting Marc in, both in regards to charitable private sector donations as well as external financiers. I think there's, potential for something sooner than 5 years, but obviously we just need to kind of work through that as a detailed project plan to make sure that we're both, in terms of comfortable with what's proceeding. I think, obviously from a build point of view, Marc, I think it looks relatively, in terms of uncomplex, I want to say. It's so from a build point of view, it shouldn't be too onerous.
Yeah. Well, we have plans from our previous attempt to build. So we have the plans. We just need to look at how they look on the new plot of land. What's the orientation of the building now? How does it affect the flight path? And so there's a few tweaks it'll need. But yeah, I think we're well ahead of the game to have a running start at this.
So I think really what we're looking at here is not only have we got the excitement of the airport itself reopening and becoming a live airfield again, but there's going to be other things happening over the next 3 to 5 years that they can really look forward to.
Yeah, if even just the kind of the first spade in the ground, Martin, once you've kind of accessed the external finance, is, a key milestone, and that'll obviously clearly will be before 3 years' time. So I think there's a number of key milestones which would be great to get behind and celebrate.
we all can't wait for, obviously, the airport to reopen. And, well, like I say, if there's other things going on that people can look forward to and keep the interest there as well for everybody, not just for 558.
Yes.
I think it's just got to be a positive thing, really, hasn't it? Yeah.
I think one of the things also is just the names under the wings. You cannot underestimate, the power of, a number of individuals, very senior individuals from different organisations internationally as well as nationally, who come to the airport, who look, for whether or not it's a family member, a work colleague or a grandparent, who've had some association with, in terms of the Vulcan. And you cannot underestimate the power of, them seeing, in terms of that particular name on the underside of the wing, and the impact it has on those individuals leaving. There's a gentleman who's got, I think, 3.5 million followers on Instagram, and he was bowled over with, in terms of his experience at Doncaster, and that was partly with, his interaction with the Vulcan, as well as, in terms of the airport itself. And I just can't underestimate, in terms of the power of all those donations and those names on the wings that really do make a huge difference in so many different ways.
So listen, I've got one more question for the both of you. Mark, you've been quiet for a while, so we'll ask you first. The partnership seems to represent an absolutely unique blend of preserving the aviation heritage while building future. What excites you both most about what lies ahead for the airport and for 558, do you think?
So for me, it's being able to do justice to the story of 558, show off as much as she deserves to be to supporters in a purpose-built facility. And we'll be a welcome part of the wider and exciting South Yorkshire Airport City project as well, which is great to be welcomed. That will be happening across the site, and all of this on a spiritual home of former RAF Finley. So does it get any better than that for us?
Absolutely not. No. Christian?
It's a really good question, Martin. I remember growing up, in the 70s and 80s, specifically in the area. And then obviously, the announcement of RAF Finley closing, and I saw the impact both on friends as well as their parents who worked in the RAF. And you couldn't underestimate the importance of the RAF legacy and the airport legacy. I mean, this is something that's been here for, over 100 years. And it's built into, in terms of the region's blood. And I, like you, Mark, I think for me, I'm quite excited about, seeing some of the deprivation that we've experienced as a city, but actually seeing, coming out of all of that and the real opportunity of invigorating young individuals, for me personally, into a profession, specifically into aviation. And if, something which feels very much like a male-dominated environment sometimes, and actually flipping that into a more, diverse, female-orientated, in terms of industry, I think would be one of the great pluses. And I think, the Vulcan can be part of that, real transformational change that we wanted to achieve here at Doncaster.
Gents, I've got to say, it's been a really fascinating half hour talking to you. Thanks very much for giving us your time today. And I look forward to all these exciting things that are going to be happening. I'm sure the listeners will as well. Thanks once again.
Thanks, Martin. You too.
Thanks, Martin.
That's all for today's episode of Into the Sky. We hope you've enjoyed soaring through the legacy of XH558 with us. Your support helps keep the story of the Vulcan alive, and if you'd like to support the Trust a little more, or find out more about what is happening, why not visit our website, vulcantothesky.org. There you can learn more about our mission, and here you can also make a donation if you wish. You can follow us on social media for behind-the-scenes content and updates. And sharing this podcast with fellow aviation enthusiasts is another great way of supporting the Trust and helping keep this legacy alive. Every contribution to preserve this iconic aircraft for generations to come is greatly appreciated. Thank you again for listening. Until next time, keep your ears tuned into the sky.